Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Keith Koo, host of the Silicon Valley Insider Radio Show. Thanks again to Mickey, who is our MC today. I do want to give a shout out to, get the panelists up here, but also for Ricky Chi, who's the director and the writer for Year of the Rat. So come on, Ricky and Jason and Jen. So we'll do this. Give me 1 second. I'm playing with a toy. Have a seat.
It's okay. It's my clearance. Yeah.
Jason.
I'll now.
And when you're speaking, I have my own mic too, so you can pass that around if you're answering a question. All right, so what'd you think? We're gonna do a moderated panel. We have some questions that we want to ask the panelists, but we also want to open it for Q&A. I'm going to introduce the panelists. They're going to get a little more deeper. So we've got from my left to right, we have Jason Collom, who is a retired San Francisco District Attorney investigator. We'll go more into his background. We have Jen Masuda, who's the executive director of a local nonprofit here called AAPI, and they serve the elder community. And also we have Ricky Chi, who was the writer and director of Year of the Rat, which is a fascinating short film. I think if you work multi-generational, that really covered everything. And my observation for this, both the short film and for Jerry starring as himself, is that because of technology, because I'm a technologist, it is really now where our elders are really actively engaging in all forms of technology, whether we're aware of that or not. So that's going to be one of the themes that we talk about in terms of how we keep our elders educated and safe as well. Actually, the whole community, but especially our elders. So, having said that, I do want to get to the short film first. So, Ricky, tell us a little bit about yourself and what was the inspiration for the short film?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? So, I wrote this short film, Year of the Rat, in the first few months of COVID, and it was directly inspired, as you can imagine, by my own mom's experiences. I went to her house to eat like a Sunday lunch with my wife, and then she started telling us about this unbelievable story that she met a guy online, and they hit it off so well, and all of a sudden she was telling us these kind of almost far-fetched stories about how he came to the US from Germany on the Queen Mary, the one that's currently in Long Beach. And then my wife went, okay, what year was that? And then she went and did a quick Google search, and the numbers didn't add up, and that's when we realized something was up. And I had a lot of time on my hands, I'm sure many of you had during COVID, and I thought about this, and I said, you know what, I wanted to tell a story about how generations can come together, because oftentimes technology and modern life might pull us apart at times. And so I thought about, when is it when kids and their parents can come together? Sometimes it might be an unfortunate incident, such as getting scammed or getting catfished, but I think in a situation like that, it really brought me, in real life, me and my wife, a lot of empathy for my mom, and made me think about all the sacrifices that she made for us.
Thanks, Ricky. And I think understanding that story and that dynamic, that again, I was saying, I've had a lot of experience with many different generations, but also understanding and caring for my parents in how my dad was adopting technology, and he's highly educated and had retired in the 90s. You brought up two really good points, which I want to lead into with both Jen and with Jason. Jen, first let's start with you, because I have a follow-up question what Ricky's saying. Give us your background. And just hold it up, both. I know.
Hold up both. Yeah. Okay, great. I'm Jen Masuda. I'm the executive director from UICI, as Keith mentioned. And I think, as Ricky was saying, the importance of having a senior community center, I think the main word in that is community, right, for seniors. We are a place where we can educate, but we're also a place to build community, and I think that's very important to have that around you. Where they actually, if you notice how parents and the children communicate versus the peer-to-peer interaction, I think there's less of that judginess there, and I think that goes a long way. I mean, I have more to share about that,
Yep.
but definitely resources.
So what I wanted to follow up with Ricky's film, and then with you, Jen, talking about
Sure.
community, and then with Jason, because I want to kind of tag team on this, is Ricky mentioned a term called catfishing. How many people know what fishing is? Just raise your hand. How many people know what catfishing is? All right, so as I look around, I see people who know both the term phishing, which is when there's somebody luring you, and it's P-H-I-S-H-I-N-G, luring you into trying to click on something or answer a call. Catfishing is similar, but with the intent of social engineering in terms of some of the things that are happening online dating. So with Jen leading community organizations, running community awareness, and Jason having been a retired investigator, I want both of you to kind of talk about, with Jason first, what your thoughts are in terms of how do we as a community respond, but how do people also protect themselves and stay aware? So Jason, take it away.
In terms of us as a community to respond, it's really important to be not judgy and come together. One of the points I think I brought up is starting around 2013, I started going around the country presenting a white-collar crime case where the life savings, every single dime of these seniors were scammed. And at the end of my presentation, very first time, somebody raised their hand and said, well, how stupid can these people be? And I was really angry at hearing that, because I've known these victims all along the way, and they've become part of my family. And for somebody to accuse them like that, well, nowadays I say, thank you for bringing that up. Now you understand that we took these cases to trial 6 separate times. I've had to explain to the jury all 6 times how a ghost can actually kill the youngest person in your family. It's not stupidity, it's cultural. It's what you're brought up with. And so be more supportive. Right before the shutdown in 19, a few blocks from here, the Taiwan Economic Center hosted another seminar on this particular scam, what Jerry fell into. And somebody says at the end of my presentation, well, how stupid can these people be? 200 people audience, big hall. When the presentation was over, the hall was clear. 6 people came up to me and said, I fell victim to this scam. And they just listened to the entire hall of 200 people laughing at them. How do they feel? How would you feel?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I want to follow up with 2 things before we go back to Jen. One is, does everyone remember that Jerry was an engineer? That's how they opened up the movie, right? So obviously had some education. And then 2, you had mentioned ghost. What did you, when you referred to you could be killed by a ghost, what did you mean by that?
So in terms of the engineer part, it's not unusual. So I've taken 2 cases in recent years, one from San Ramon. He fell victim to this exact scam and lost $750,000. He was also a Silicon Valley engineer. Another person, a San Franciscan, she also fell victim to this scam. She was also an engineer. So it's not uncommon. And every single one of my victims have been very educated. The highest loss in San Francisco was $2.865 million back in 2018. So she's highly educated, owned a lot of property. And in terms of ghosts, it doesn't play into these movies here, but it's regarding yet another type of affinity scam that targets Chinese seniors. And that's what I'm really into. It's not my major investigative tasks, but if somebody walks into my office or calls me with help, it doesn't matter what county they live in, I will try to help them out just because nobody else will.
All right, well, thanks. We'll get back. I want to know more about Affinity, but I want to go back to Jen. So Jen, you deal with the community, that's your full-time job. What have you heard, if any, similar stories, or what steps have you been taking to educate?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a senior community center, we are responsible to educate and be a resource for the community. The thing that is great about that is that now the senior has a trusted resource, right? So to give you an example of what we do, and in fact, this is how I actually met Jason probably a year ago. We actually held a workshop, and we do this on a regular basis to educate seniors about scams, different type of scams, how to protect themselves, but also what can they do, and also what resources UICI or any senior center that has a social service department can do for them. So for example, in our social service office, we provide, and it's free, seniors come in to sit down and go through their mail because they cannot discern what is real and what is a scam. So any ways that we can help on a one-on-one basis, that helps them. And following workshops like the ones that we do, like the one with Jason actually, after the workshop is over, it always is when the workshop is over, people come forward and they talk about, I was scammed. And people are always surprised because, it's something that nobody talks about. But it's because of these workshops and getting educated that these stories come out. And I think the more that these seniors talk to one another about it, they become more aware, but they also have someone to talk about it with. And I think it takes away the shame.
I think that's a great point about shame. When we were preparing for this panel, I mentioned that earlier in the week. So on my radio show, I actually almost always have a cyber tip. So I have a weekly radio show, Silicon Valley Insider. I always give a cyber tip on how the public can either protect themselves. And so there's an FBI agent in San Francisco named Elvis Chan, who happens to be Asian American, and he's the field agent for crimes and cyber crimes. Jason, he had collaborated before. So I saw him again at a conference that was early this week for the city of San Jose for Cyber Awareness Day. And the reason why I bring this up, because it's not just individuals, it's not just seniors, but the time that Elvis and I met, we were supposed to do a panel like this, but it came out to be, in confidence, a whole session around ransomware and other cyber crimes. And so there were business leaders, mid-tier company CEOs, all kind of confessing, saying like what they've been scammed with or how they should have handled it better. So I just want to make it clear for the audience that there's no shame, there's no guilt. I mean, this is something that's happening. And the cost of cybercrime or crimes in general, there's a very low barrier. You saw at the end of the movie that what Jerry had perceived to be these real Chinese police officers were in fact people probably living in some basement eating ramen and really just fled. So these are the scammers. So going back to Ricky, I think in terms of just watching the short film and the interaction between the daughter and the mother initially, and then having the mother go out on her own, and the daughter's not seeing any of it. This is kind of the cautionary tale. You had mentioned that was a personal experience between you and your wife. Hearing the stories with starring Jerry as himself, what's either triggering or what are the thoughts going in your mind as you had made your movie? What are the parallels that you saw?
Oh, well, that's a great question. First off, I'd just like to say, starring Jerry as himself is probably the best movie I've seen all year. And I thought it was just an absolute tour de force. Just an incredible film. And just amazing in terms of the participation of the very real people who got scammed and were willing to be open to this. But to answer your question, from a storytelling perspective, it's the same structure. It's the same structure. It's the same situation in which parents are separated, or the elderly or parents are separated from their families due to societal the way society is structured. Kids got to go out and make a living and break off from the rest of the family, start families of their own. And this is inherently baked into America. In East Asia, from where I'm from, you have multi-generational households. And that's a normal thing for somebody in their 30s to be living with their parents. But here we have a lot of societal pressure to break off, buy our own house with a white picket fence. And as you know, these days, housing costs a lot of money. And so what I kind of see as a big issue here is how society is structured such that it basically takes away, I think, a lot of the connections that families would otherwise have. Those are the kind of safety nets that prevent situations like this from arising.
Yeah, I like that point. I know we have a lot of folks here who volunteer their time or work in the senior community, especially, we're getting the first, second, third, fourth, fifth generation, Asian specifically, in this context. And so I know there's a struggle. And I know with a lot of first generation, immigrant generation coming to the United States, that they're struggling with this, right? Because they don't know what resources are available, what's acceptable, this thought about parents, sandwich generation. And I think, Jen, you probably experience this on a daily basis with the work you're doing in the community center.
I don't know about daily, but yeah, definitely, we're constantly trying to educate, right? Constantly trying to educate and also bring people together, right? I think that's very key. And kind of to what Ricky was saying, our social service department also does wellness checks because there are a lot of homebound seniors, and so that's really important. What if you have nobody, right? So there's actually somebody to come in and check. They do phone calls, and then now that COVID is over, we're back to actual in-person checks. But I think those are important things, right? You need some type of person or organization to advocate for you and to be there, to be kind of the watchdog, and in a very fair and non-biased kind of way, and also for that senior to have a trusted resource.
Thanks. Before we get into Q&A, I wanted to ask Jason, what are some, I'm sure we'll do it in the Q&A as well, what are some of the things that people should be thinking about as they see these movies and then as they get emails or phone calls? What are a few ways they can protect themselves?
So I'm famously quoted by the Chronicle by saying, when you get one of these calls, just hang up. And that's the thing. If somebody calls you, you're not expecting them, you don't know them, there's absolutely no reason for you to converse with them. And if you start conversation and you think it's somebody friendly, you think it's somebody that you know because they're posing as a grandson or whatever, right? Red flags should be immediately thrown up when they start talking about money. So at the end of the day, the scammers want only one thing. That's your money. So if anyone who wants to discuss money with you and you're not sure who they are, get their number back. Do some research online with that telephone number and ask somebody. Talk to your kids, talk to a husband, a friend, somebody at church, and say, hey, what do you think? And the other part is social media. I've had quite a few middle-aged to older adults approach me and said, hey, this person approached me on Facebook. They seemed like such a great person, do you think it's real? And first thing is, well, probably not, let's check, right? So what I always ask them to do is go ahead and cut and paste the picture from Facebook or whatever and do a Google image search to see how many names come up with this. So with this, there's a very, one of the pillars of San Francisco community in her 80s, she says, what about this guy? I said, well, there are 18 profiles with 18 different names. And she says, but I think mine is real. Should I continue our relationship? He is so good looking. I said, no, you shouldn't. And so I called her every single day for the next 2 weeks to make sure that she hasn't communicated with him again. Use Google, that's your friend.
That's a good point. And also, even when you know somebody, like if you say you know me, I do get a lot of impersonators, and they copy the bots will copy your profile, they'll copy your image, they'll look like on Instagram I'm Tech Maven, one word, but people will put like a little underscore. And I did a short thing where I had like at this point 25 fakes, and so I did a video about the fakes. My daughter did the clip and she edited it all for me. But the point is, even the people you think you know and you do know, it may be a fake profile on social media. Before we go to Q&A, what I wanted to say is, and I always bring different stories. My son right now is into writing in middle school, and we talk about how back to Western films, which I will say because Ricky, you brought in how Jerry starring as himself was very powerful. In Western films, you have the hero's journey. There's usually that story arc of starting something on it. You hit some roadblock or some barrier, and there's a happy ending. Starring Jerry as myself, what I took out was a very Asian or very Chinese film. There was no happy ending on that, right? And so that was the thought I had, and we can talk more about that as we go to Q&A. So with the time left, we'll take a few questions from the audience. If someone's got a mic, we'll do that.
All right, show of hands. All right, up and down.
Thanks. And you can ask any one of the panelists a question. And please state your name and then who you'd like, either any of the panelists or which panelists you'd like to answer the question.
Hello? Hey, my name is Matthew. I have a question for Inspector Jason. So I'm kind of curious if you could speak to the role that loyalty may play in a lot of these scams, because when I was watching Jerry, I almost got the feeling like he needed to feel appreciated for his loyalty, and his family was kind of being estranged. He was a divorcee too, right? And he was almost using the interaction with the scammers who were really just, getting into his life, like having him send the photos of his breakfast every day. Like he almost felt like that was a way to feel appreciated. And I actually did see that a little bit in Year of the Rat as well. I find it's very interesting that Ricky kind of started that film with the daughter kind of feeling unappreciated, or rather the mother feeling unappreciated after making this meal for her daughter, and then she goes and actually tries to deliver a home cooked meal to this guy she met online, and it's just this idea of loyalty is kind of baked into a lot of these scams.
You nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. This is what we term as an affinity scam. And most of these white-collar crime cases that go after not your life savings, but your coffin capital, gun choi bun, it's all about affinity. The bad guys know something about you. The bad guys know your weaknesses, your likes, your dislike, what you're hiding. The bad guys know what you're scared of, being embarrassed in front of your family. They go after that. And I've always had to explain to American-born Chinese police officers that just went out on patrol and get assigned to Chinatown, right? They speak a little bit of Chinese and they think they got it. And I sometimes go along and say, well, I'm just here to observe. First thing they say to a senior is, Lei hou ma, or ni hao ma, right? And the senior says, I'm good. What do you want? And kind of ends the conversation, right? I said, you know what? That's where you need to connect a little bit more. In Chinese culture, whether it's Mandarin, Cantonese, it doesn't matter. Food is a very important element. Whether you've eaten or not, that is the most important thing to open somebody up. That's why I always say, Apo, kak fan mea, or sik jo fan mea, and you will see the smile. They will say, yes, I did, and they say, mea, come on. You start talking about food. They'll tell you all about food. They'll tell you about their meal. You'll see the smile, and they'll ask you about your meal, and then you move into business. It's affinity. Empowering the victim. Again, asking the victim, hey, maybe you can give my dad some tips on trading. Now Jerry just kind of lost control of all his finances, and he's just going along with what these people are saying. But you're empowering the victim at the same time. Give him some hope, saying, hey man, maybe I can pay you guys back by being the boss of you. And being retired and alone, it's a scary thing. If somebody is there to talk to you, you'd want to talk to them. And all of my victims, they've always checked in daily, on time, several times a day. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah,
Great point.
Thanks, Matt. Yep, please.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. I think the key there is, right, that senior is looking for connectivity. And that's the importance of community again. They just want a peer, right? They want someone to connect with. And that's what the scammers were giving them too, that connectiveness. And so it is important to connect with seniors in a very real and authentic kind of way. And senior centers are great for that.
Yeah, and I'll say, it's not just seniors that happens every day, it happens with online. I will admit that I was almost taken for a ride by a very close individual who, he had gotten himself into trouble, and it got to the point where actually I did go to the police station, I did file an incident report just to protect myself. So just be aware that it's not just seniors, it's everyone, especially now with the world we live in tech, also in the age of AI because of deep fakes. Because you can now pretend to do things that you didn't do, or people can accuse you of doing things that you didn't do. That's a much longer conversation, but this is just more of it's not a senior conversation only, even though the two films were centered around seniors. It's a lot of different people, especially for young people. There's a question up there.
Yeah, I had a question about.
Microphone?
Oh.
Yeah, we got one more question up here first.
Oh, wait.
Oh, sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
hold for you up there.
Forgive me. Thank you. Thank you for both films.
And your name?
Oh, my name is Simi. Hi. Hello.
Hello.
I just wanted to comment to say, yes, I'm 23 years old, and growing up in the age of social media, I have also been scammed. We have all had a moment like that in our lives, so truly no one is alone. My question is for Ricky, and on kind of the relationship and the actress who played Joy. It was such an endearing film, and I wanted to ask, because you mentioned so much of the story is based on your own mother. So what were those conversations like with the actress playing Joy? How much of her character is your mother, and how much of it was actually her being able to give her own take on it?
Well, I think that's a fantastic question. The actress that played Joy is sitting in the audience here today. Lee, could you stand up? Lee, do you want to answer this question together, maybe? We can...
You come on up.
Come on up.
Come on up.
Woo!
So I guess I'll get started. The conversation that I had with Lee about this, I mean, largely centered around what our both of our personal experiences being immigrants are, and comparing notes, because Lee is also in the arts, which is highly unusual for first generation Chinese Americans. And Lee, I know we've had conversations about, you know, how we interact with our parents as well, and maybe you can kind of bring some light to that.
Yeah, it's great that I had the opportunity to be part of Ricky's project. So I myself is a first generation immigrant. I was just telling one of my friend, she's in the audience, and we met 30-something years in China, and I told her I never thought I would continue acting in America, because I was a child actor in China Mouse propaganda performing troupe. But when I grew up, I studied English. I came to America for my grad school, and I didn't think I would go back to acting, but accidentally I was in Chicago, got into the theater. I did a lot of theater in English. And so then I came to do the film for Ricky, and first thing I thought, it's so great that you're writing a story that middle-aged immigrant actor will play lead. So I played lots of supporting actors as the mother for the Chinese daughters, Chinese sons. So I'm so great. He wrote this script, and when I got it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's I have my own experience as the first generation immigrant. And I think, what's the other story?
Also, how much of your character on screen was Ricky's mother, or how much of it was actually your own portrayal?
Oh, I think it's more Ricky's mother. And when I got the script, I had the feeling of being the first generation of immigrant to have a better life. And I myself came as a graduate student and stayed and brought my whole family here. And in terms of the story of Ricky, actually it's his own story, but he used the daughter instead of the son. Remember we talked about that? And so I basically just went into the character as a single mother who brought up the two kids, and then if it's in China, I would be with my children. At least one of my children would stay with me. But in America, you're 18 years old, you leave. I myself right now, I was just telling my husband, my older son is 22, and he went to college, graduated, but my younger son, at 19, and he wanted to be a gamer, and in January, he just moved out with the gaming house. 3 months later, I thought he would come home, but he moved out. I'm still in shock.
So as we move on to our final question, I know somebody who went to Berkeley, did professional gaming, somehow amassed like 150 Bitcoin and is living in a house in a mansion. So it happened. So you have hope. We have time for one more question. Thanks, Lee, for joining us. And as we do that, just because I don't know everyone's background, I know Jason studied Asian American Studies. For those who aren't aware, if you study Asian American Studies, we use the Japanese system. So first generation is Issei, the immigrant generation, right? And Issei is the second generation. If you're straight up, your parents did not study Asian American, you're Chinese or Korean or other Asians, they are the zero immigrant generation, and I would be the first because I'm born here, just to make that clear. All right, one more question. Right there.
Okay. So my name is Mabel Yee, and I have a question for Jason. And I would counter what you just said. So I was born and raised in Berkeley, California. My parents came from China because of the whole, communist thing. And being labeled an Asian American is how I grew up. But to tell you the truth, after all these years, I'm really an American with Chinese parents. Okay, and I will say that. Different topic, okay?
So you're directing that towards me.
No, just it.
Oh, okay.
Not just
No,
you,
fine.
to other people. I mean, that's just something that we all have identity issues. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So, anyways, the question to Jason is, with AI being so prevalent, machine learning and all these things, it's not just deep fakes. AI is affecting everything. Okay. How do you deal with the scams that are going to be coming, that are going to be much deeper than what we've seen so far?
That's why I retired back in February.
Smart guy.
No, you know what? I think again, the bottom line you gotta remember is that the scammers are after money, right? So any talk of money, anything that has to do with your money going out somewhere else, that should be a trigger point. That should be something that raises the red flag and say, maybe I shouldn't continue this. So again, it's your option. It is purely your choice to just hang up or just continue the conversation online or wherever. Don't fall for it. And sadly is, out of the probably about 20 cases that I personally investigated and spent a lot of time on, I've only had 2 full recoveries from this particular scam that Jerry went through. 2 recoveries. Okay, so the only thing that will save the next victim is awareness.
Thanks a lot, Jason. Thanks for the question, Mabel. Offline, Mickey and I do a lot of AI talks.
Totally.
So
We'll take
talk about that later. So we are out of time. I do want to thank Lee for joining us. It was great to have the actress here. Ricky Chi, the writer and director of You're the Rat, great story. Jen Masuda, executive director of UIKI. And Jason Collom, retired inspector with the District Attorney's Office in San Francisco. So thanks again. And now I want to introduce back up Mickey Bellin, Mickey's like my sister. She's emceeing today. So
Thank you,
thanks
Keith.
Keith.
Jason, Jen, Ricky, Lee. This was phenomenal. Was that not riveting? The films were just riveting and powerful. I want to thank everyone in the audience today for joining us. I think it was an excellent way to kick off our second day. We have, our greeters have QR codes, so we would love for you to rate the films and give us your feedback. Also, you can take pictures outside. We have another film in the next 20 minutes, and hopefully you'll stay for our next session. But thank you very much for attending this wonderful The Year of the Rat, and starring Jerry as himself, and hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you.